Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be sharing with you all of the books that I want to read in spring this year, so my spring TBR. Last week I shared a video with my spring book recommendations, so all of the books that I've read before that I think are perfect for springtime. And this video is kind of another book recommendations video for spring, except I haven't read any of these books. However, I do feel like all of the books in this stack are very spring-like or fit the kind of spring books mood or theme. There are other books, of course, that I want to read over the next few months, but these books in particular are ones that I feel like will embody and encapsulate something of this season. So the first book on this list is House of Many Ways by Diana Wynne Jones, and this is the third and final book, I think, in the Howl's Moving Castle series. It's not really a series, it's companion novels that are set in the same world as Howl's Moving Castle is. And I read the second book, Castle in the Air, last summer, I think, and I finally picked up the third one. And I've heard a lot of people who loved Howl's Moving Castle, didn't really like Castle in the Air, say that House of Many Ways builds it up again. And personally, I didn't mind Castle in the Air. I thought it was quite a nice book, but I do agree that compared to House Moving Castle, it was, of course, not that level. So I'm excited to read this, and I hope that it does match at least a little bit of the charm and whimsy and wonder that is Howl's Moving Castle. As I said, these are companion novels, so they're not really a direct sequel to the events of Howl's Moving Castle. However, I do believe that characters kind of reappear from those books. It says on the back of this one that Sophie and Howl do feature quite prominently in this story, whereas they really didn't in the second one. So I think this will be a little bit more of a sequel. And I feel like spring is just perfect for classic or children's fantasy. I think children's fantasy has even more of a hopefulness in it that I just think this time of year really calls for. So I'm really excited to finally pick this one up and finish all of the books within this children's fantasy world. And then along the theme of classic kind of fantasy, I really want to continue on this spring with the Earthsea series by Ursula K. Le Guin. I started this series last spring with the first book, which is A Wizard of Earthsea, and then the second book is The Tombs of Atuan, which I also read last year at some point, and then I just haven't picked up this series again since then. However, I want to carry on and hopefully finish at least the 4 books in the series that are in this lined up. I believe there are more after these 4. The third book in the series is called The Farthest Shore, and then the final book is called Tahanu. And I don't really know what happens in these books. The first book and the second book are just completely different storylines, so I'm not sure if the third book is going to pick up on one of those 2 stories or if it's going to be a completely new one again. I found that I enjoyed the second book in this series a lot more than the first one, and so I'm hoping that the momentum of the story and the world building continues in the third and fourth stories. And I just feel again that this is a perfect kind of spring read because it is set in an archipelago, and I'm never able to say that word. It's set in an archipelago, and so a lot of the scenes are sort of boats across the water and coastline, and it feels spring, summer kind of feel. And actually the third book I did open just earlier today to start reading a little bit, and it's set in the beginning of the story in kind of late March, and so even the kind of time of year that the book is set is in spring. I then have a few classics that I'm really excited to read this springtime. The first one being The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. L.M. Montgomery being the author of the Anne of Green Gables series, which I absolutely adore. This, I believe, is L.M. Montgomery's adult book. I don't know if she has that many adult books because Anne of Green Gables and a lot of her other series are very much children's stories. But this is a book about, I think the main character is maybe in her 30s or 20s, and so she's a little bit older, and I don't really know that much about what this book is about, but I know that if it's anything even close to how charming Anne of Green Gables is and how heartwarming that story is, then I'm going to love it. I've heard that it has a very sweet romance and a really engrossing storyline as well, and so yeah, I'm really excited to read this one. I also think this cover is so beautiful. The next classic that I'm excited to pick up this springtime is To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, and I actually didn't realise this when I picked up the book, but it's apparently set in Cornwall, which I only found out because I was googling books set in Cornwall for a Cornish reading vlog that I'm hoping to do in the next couple of months, where I'm just going to read books set in Cornwall and review them, and found out that this actually is set in Cornwall. You know, I'm now reading the synopsis and it says it's set in Skye, so I don't know what this website was saying. I'm going to need to research that before I feature it in that video, otherwise that will not be that will defeat the point a little bit. I believe this is quite a melancholy type of family drama story about a family who always go on holiday in the summer to this particular place, and this book follows them going back to this childhood holiday destination years later, and the family relationships and tragedies and difficulties that have happened to them. And so I don't think this will be a light spring read by any means. I also haven't read anything by Virginia Woolf before, and so I'm excited to explore her writing a little bit. I think I'm going to really enjoy this one. Another classic that I am excited to read, I feel like a lot of the books in this list are classics. Maybe springtime is the time of year where I want to read classics the most. But another one that I'm really excited to read is The Enchanted April. I've heard so many people say that they love this book so much and that it is the perfect cozy springtime read. And I knew that if I'm going to read it, I'm going to have to read it in April. Otherwise, I'm going to have to wait till next year and read it in April. This is a book that quite a few of you guys have commented in my videos before about being a perfect springtime read, and whenever you comment a book recommendation in my videos, I actually keep a little list on my phone of everything that you have recommended to me, and this has been on that list for a while. So if you ever comment with a book recommendation, do know that I actually look into those books and look for them in bookshops and always keep an eye out for them. So please keep sending me your book recommendations, because I don't think that this book would have actually made this list if it hadn't been recommended to me so many times. And I've also seen it on other people's YouTube videos. And so yes, I was definitely influenced by YouTube to read this book. It's about two women who, they're very sacrificial people. One of them particularly spends a lot of time caring for the poor, and the other one is very much a sacrificial person in family life. And they see this advertisement for a villa in Italy that is available to rent for a month, and it's supposed to be full of beautiful descriptions of the sunshine and just April in Italy. And so I do feel like this is going to be the perfect April read. And then finally we have The Feast by Margaret Kennedy, which definitely is set in Cornwall because it says it on the front of the cover. Cornwall, summer 1947. This is a mystery kind of novel about a hotel on a cliff top in Cornwall, and I believe that the cliff crumbles and the hotel falls. I think we go back in time to these characters who have died and sort of the lead up to that cliff fall. And yeah, that's all I know about it. This will definitely be featuring in my Cornish reading vlog video. And then the final classic that I wanted to mention was, of course, Anne of Green Gables. I feel like Anne of Green Gables is such a springtimey kind of read, and I am 3 books into the series now. I've read Anne of Green Gables, Anne of Avonlea and Anne of the Island. Anne of the Island was my favourite of the first three for sure, and I just haven't carried on yet with the series, so I'm hoping to pick up at least one of the next books, if not maybe two. I think the next one in the series that I haven't read yet is Anne of Windy Poplars. In the third book, Anne was in university, and so kind of that 18, 19, 20 kind of age group. And I believe she graduated in that book. And so in this one, she is a little bit older, definitely established in adulthood a little bit more and finding her feet in that. I can't really say anything more about where I think the series is at because it will be a massive spoiler, but needless to say, I'm really excited for the romance element of this book. I have one literary fiction book on this list. I don't really read a lot of literary fiction anymore. I used to read it quite often, but this year I don't think I've really read any, and so I think I need to pick one up, and I really want to read Spring by Ali Smith. This is the third book in the seasonal quartet that she wrote, and I read Autumn, it must have been about 4-5 years ago when it came out. I think it was about 5 years ago. And then I read Winter when that came out probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And I just haven't carried on with the series. I feel like I don't really know. I can't really remember what happened in the first two, but I do remember that you don't have to necessarily read them in order because the stories are separate stories going on. So I don't think I need to remember too much. What I do remember about this series though is that it kind of takes a kind of current political moment and then blends it with a season, and then that sort of depicts that political moment. Spring, I believe, was written and published in lockdown. That's the other thing with these books, is that Ali Smith tried to write them in that political moment and publish them in that moment. So I think she had to write them in such a short, intense kind of time. And I think that makes them really powerful because they are such a commentary on what is going on right now. And so I'm really interested to see what she wrote and what she drew from lockdown in the midst of it. And the last two books that I want to read in spring are period romance novels. So the first one on my list is A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting by Sophie Irwin, which is a Bridgerton-esque period romance novel. I think it only came out in the last year, so it's quite a new novel. We follow Kitty, whose parents have recently passed away, and as a result she is now the main breadwinner for her family. And in the 1800s she knows that the only way to rid her family of the debt that her parents have left her and allow them, I think she has 4 or 5 sisters, allow them to have the life that they want is, of course, to marry rich. And then the final book on this spring TBR is Edenbrook by Julianne Donaldson. This was on my spring TBR last year and I never got to it, but I think I really do want to get to it this year. I don't really know that much about it other than that loads of people recommend it as the perfect wholesome spring period romance. It's supposed to be very sweet and nice and not too deep but also not too fluffy, like somewhere in the middle. That one is more of a typical period romance type story, whereas Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting is a bit more kind of witty and comical. I think this one is a bit more of a serious period romance. I really don't read books like that very often, however I read Persuasion earlier this year and really enjoyed it, and I'm feeling that longing to read other kind of books like that. So that is on my list and I hope that I will be able to get to that this year as well. So those are all of the spring themed books on my TBR for this season. Please let me know in the comments what books are at the top of your TBR this spring, and also which books would you recommend that I read. I am always looking for more book recommendations, so feel free to leave your recommendations down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a wonderful day and I'll see you very soon with another video.